My sister was supposed to get married first, but I beat her to it. Here's a bombshell for you. I, the perpetually single, perpetually chaotic younger sister, somehow managed to tie the knot before my older sister, who'd been dreaming of her wedding day since she could pin a veil on a Barbie doll. It's the kind of twist that sounds like it belongs in a cheesy movie script, maybe one with a quirky soundtrack and a lot of slow-motion montages, but no, it's my real life. How did I, Lily, the girl who couldn't commit to a Netflix series, let alone a man, end up stealing the matrimonial spotlight from Sarah, the family's golden girl? Grab a snack, settle in, and let me take you through the wild, winding tale of how it all went down. My name's Lily Harper and I'm 26 years old, born and raised in a smallish town just outside Seattle where everyone knows your business whether you like it or not. My sister, Sarah Harper, is 29, 3 years my senior, and she's always been the one who had it all figured out. Growing up, she was the kid with the color-coded binders, the straight-A report cards, and the kind of calm confidence that made teachers adore her and parents brag at every holiday gathering. She went to college for graphic design, landed a steady job at a hip little studio downtown, and had been dating her boyfriend Mark for 5 solid years. Me? I was the opposite. I flunked out of community college after 1 semester, bounced between jobs like barista, dog walker, and once, briefly, a mascot for a mattress store, don't ask. And my love life was a string of short-lived flings that fizzled out faster than a sparkler on the 4th of July. Marriage wasn't even a blip on my radar, while Sarah had been sketching her wedding dress in notebooks since she was 16, complete with lace details and a 10-foot train. Let's set the scene a little more. Sarah and Mark were the couple everyone rooted for. He was a quiet, dependable accountant with a passion for hiking and a habit of bringing Sarah coffee in bed every Saturday morning. Black, 2 sugars, just how she liked it. They'd been together since college, and 2 years ago, they'd moved into a cute little apartment with exposed brick walls and a balcony where Sarah grew herbs in mismatched pots. Last Christmas, she'd found a velvet ring box tucked into Mark's sock drawer while putting away laundry. She didn't confront him about it, Sarah's too classy for that, but she called me later that night, her voice trembling with excitement. "Lily, I think it's happening soon," she'd whispered, like it was a secret too big to say out loud. "I saw the box and it's the perfect size for a ring. Oh my God, I can't breathe." I'd laughed and told her she deserved it because she did. She'd been patient, dropping subtle hints to Mark for years, and the whole family was on edge waiting for the big moment. Mom was already mentally designing centerpieces, and Dad kept joking about dusting off his old tuxedo to walk her down the aisle. Sarah's wedding was going to be the event of the decade, and I was happy to play the supportive little sister, maybe even snag a cute groomsman if I played my cards right. Meanwhile, I was living a completely different story. I just started a new gig at Brew and Bean, a funky little coffee shop with mismatched furniture, and a chalkboard menu that changed every week. It wasn't glamorous, minimum wage, sticky floors, and the occasional rude customer, but I liked the vibe. My love life, though? A total dumpster fire. I'd been on a string of first dates that never made it to a second. There was the guy who talked about his ex the whole time, the one who showed up in flip-flops in January, and the one who asked to borrow $20 before the appetizers even arrived. I wasn't bitter about it, honest. I liked my freedom, my little studio apartment with its thrift store couch, and the fact that I could eat cereal for dinner without anyone judging me. But there was always this quiet hum in the background, this sense that Sarah was the star of the show and I was the quirky side character. She was the bride-in-waiting, and I was the eternal bachelorette. That was the deal, and I'd made peace with it. Or so I thought. Here's where the problem, or maybe the challenge, comes into play. In our family, there's this unspoken rule. This invisible thread that ties everything together. Things happen in order. Sarah, being the oldest, was supposed to hit all the big milestones first. She graduated high school first, went to college first, got a real job first, and naturally she was supposed to get married first. It wasn't some rigid tradition carved in stone, but it was there, lurking in every conversation. "When Sarah gets married, it'll be such a beautiful day," Mom would say, her eyes misty with pride. "Don't worry, Lily, your turn will come," Dad would add, patting my shoulder like I was a kid waiting for a participation trophy. Even our extended family bought into it. Aunt Linda would cluck her tongue and say, "Sarah's going to make such a stunning bride," while Uncle Rob would wink at me and say, "Plenty of fish in the sea, kiddo." Culturally, we're not super old school. Our parents didn't care about dowries or arranged marriages, but there's still this vibe that the older sibling sets the pace, and the younger one follows. Sarah's wedding was supposed to be the grand kickoff, the first domino to fall in our family's next chapter. My job was to cheer from the sidelines, maybe catch the bouquet if I got lucky, and wait my turn. But life doesn't give a damn about unspoken rules or family scripts. While Sarah was patiently waiting for Mark to drop to one knee, I was stumbling into something I never saw coming. It all started with a guy named Jake Sullivan, who wandered into Brew and Bean one rainy Tuesday afternoon in March. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with messy brown hair that looked like he'd just rolled out of bed and a smile that could melt ice. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and made some goofy comment about the rain. "Guess Noah's building the ark again, huh?" That caught me off guard and made me laugh. I didn't think much of it at the time. Cute guys came into the shop all the time, flirting for a free muffin or a smile, but Jake was different. He kept coming back. Every day, 3:15 p.m. on the dot, he'd stroll in, order his black coffee, and chat with me while I wiped down counters or refilled the sugar station. He'd ask about my day, tell me about his. Turns out he was a freelance photographer, always lugging around a beat-up Nikon, and before I knew it I was looking forward to those little moments. After a week of this, he leaned across the counter one day, his hazel eyes glinting with mischief, and said, "So Lily, your name's on your tag, no stalking required. Can I get your number? Or do I have to keep drinking terrible coffee to see you?" I smirked, scribbled my number on a napkin, and handed it to him, figuring it'd be another dead-end flirtation. I mean, I'd been burned before, guys who texted once and ghosted, or worse, texted too much and turned clingy. But Jake? He texted me that night just a simple, "Hey, it's the coffee guy. You free Friday?" And that was it. Our first date was a glorious mess. We got lost trying to find this new taco joint he'd heard about, ended up eating greasy street food under an awning while rain poured down around us, and laughed until my stomach hurt. By the third date, I knew I was in deep. Jake wasn't just charming, he was real. He'd show up with wildflowers he'd picked on a shoot, or drag me to some random park to watch the sunset, and every time he looked at me it felt like he was seeing me, not some version he wanted me to be. I was falling hard and fast, and the craziest part? He was falling too. 2 months in, we were eating pancakes at this hole-in-the-wall diner, syrup dripping everywhere, when he dropped a bombshell. He looked at me across the table, fork halfway to his mouth, and said, "You know, Lily, I could see myself marrying you someday." I nearly choked on my orange juice. "What?" I sputtered, laughing to cover the way my heart was racing. "You're insane. We've been dating for like 8 weeks. He grinned unfazed. "I know. But when you know, right?" I didn't have an answer, mostly because my brain was short-circuiting, but the wilder thing was I could see it too. Not in a concrete let's plan it now way, but in this fuzzy, warm, maybe someday way that scared the hell out of me and thrilled me all at once. Back on Sarah's side of the universe, things were stalling. Mark still hadn't proposed, and she was starting to fray at the edges. We were at her apartment one night, splitting a bottle of cheap Pinot Grigio, when she vented about it. "He's waiting for the perfect moment," she said, swirling her glass. "He's so thoughtful, you know? He wants it to be special. But God, I wish he'd just do it already." She laughed, but it was tight, forced. 5 years, Lily. 5 years, and I'm still waiting." I nodded, sipping my wine, feeling a twist of guilt in my gut. Jake and I were moving at light speed, while Sarah's perfect moment kept slipping further away. I didn't tell her about his marriage comment. It felt too raw, too hypothetical, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our timelines were about to collide in a way no one expected. The real turning point came 6 months into my thing with Jake. It was a Saturday in July, hot and hazy, and he'd convinced me to ditch work early for a spontaneous road trip. "Come on, Lil," he'd said, dangling his car keys in front of me. "Let's get out of here. I've got a spot." I called in sick, sorry, Brew and Bean. And we drove an hour outside the city to this little lake surrounded by pine trees and rocky cliffs. He'd packed a picnic, all my favorites: turkey and avocado sandwiches, salt and vinegar chips, and a bottle of cheap rose we drank straight from the bottle because we forgot cups. We swam in the cold, clear water, splashing each other like kids, then sprawled out on a ratty old blanket to dry off under the sun. It was one of those days that feels like a snapshot, all golden light and easy laughter, the kind you want to bottle up and keep forever. As the sun started dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. Jake pulled out his camera. "Hold still," he said, aiming the lens at me. "You look like a dream right now." I groaned, swatting at him. "You're ridiculous. I'm all sweaty and gross." But he just smiled and kept clicking away, the shutter snapping like a heartbeat. Then he set the camera down, scooted closer, and took my hands in his. His palms were warm, a little rough from carrying gear all the time, and his eyes were locked on mine in a way that made my breath catch. "Lily," he said, his voice low and steady, "I don't want to wait for someday. I want to marry you. Like for real. Not today, I mean we'd need a license and stuff, but soon. Will you marry me?" Time stopped. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it, and my mouth went dry. He didn't have a ring. He admitted later it wasn't planned, just a moment that seized him. But the way he looked at me, so sure, so unguarded, was worth more than any diamond. "Are you serious?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, squeezing my hands. "Dead serious." I laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound, and then I said it. "Yes." Quiet at first, then louder. "Yes. Oh my God, yes." We kissed, hard and messy, then fell back on the blanket, laughing and crying and staring up at the sky as it darkened. I was engaged. Me, Lily Harper, the girl who once lost her phone in her own apartment for 3 days, was going to be someone's wife. And Sarah didn't even know. Telling my family was a minefield. I started with Mom and Dad, figuring they'd be the softest landing. It was Sunday dinner at their house, the usual spread of roast chicken and mashed potatoes, and I waited until we were halfway through the meal to drop the bomb. "So, I have news," I said, pushing my peas around my plate. "Jake proposed last night. At the lake." And I said yes. Mom's fork clattered to her plate, sending a glob of gravy flying. Dad froze mid-chew, his bushy eyebrows shooting up to his hairline. "Jake," Mom said like she needed clarification. "Coffee shop Jake?" I nodded, biting my lip. "Yeah, we're engaged." There was a beat of silence. Then Mom let out a little squeak and jumped up to hug me. "Oh, Lily, honey. That's wonderful." Dad joined in, wrapping me in a bear hug, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. "But, Sarah," he started, trailing off. I knew what he meant. Sarah was supposed to go first. They weren't mad, just stunned, like I'd rewritten the family playbook without warning. Sarah was next, and that was the one I dreaded most. I dragged Jake along for backup, and we showed up at her apartment the next afternoon. She answered the door in yoga pants and a messy bun, all smiles until she saw my face. "What's up?" she asked, stepping aside to let us in. I took a deep breath, held up my left hand where Jake had slipped a cheap silver promise ring he'd bought at a gas station that morning, until we could afford a real one, and said, "Sarah, Jake proposed. We're getting married." Her smile didn't drop exactly, but it froze like a glitch in a video game. Her eyes darted from my hand to Jake, then back to me. "Wait, what?" she said, her voice tight and high. "You're engaged? Like right now?" I nodded, and for a split second I saw something flash in her eyes, shock maybe, or hurt, or something darker. Then she lunged forward and hugged me, squeezing so tight I could barely breathe. "Oh my God, Lily, that's wow. Congratulations." Her words were warm, but her tone was off, clipped, and when she pulled back, her smile was a little too bright, a little too brittle. The fallout rippled through the family like a stone skipped across a pond. Aunt Linda called me the next day, her voice a mix of amusement and disbelief. "You little sneak. Stealing Sarah's thunder like that? I need all the details." My cousin Mia, who's 22 and lives for drama, texted me a string of shocked emojis, wide eyes, screaming faces, exploding heads, followed by, "Dude, Sarah's gonna kill you. This is wild." Even Mark got in on it. He cornered me at a family barbecue a week later, a beer in his hand, and said, "I was gonna propose next month. Had the whole thing planned, dinner, a hike, the works. Now I don't know what to do." He didn't sound mad, just lost, and I felt like the world's worst sister, accidentally derailing everyone's plans with one reckless, yes. The next few weeks were a blur. Jake and I didn't want a long engagement. We settled on a quick, simple wedding 3 months out, in October, at a local park with just close family and friends. We found a spot under a big oak tree, rented some folding chairs, and planned a potluck reception because neither of us had the cash for anything fancy. Sarah threw herself into helping me plan, picking out wildflowers for the bouquets and designing these gorgeous invitations on her computer. But there was this tension I couldn't ignore. She'd make these little digs. Must be nice to move so fast. Or guess I'm the slowpoke now. And I'd laugh them off, pretending they didn't hit me square in the chest. Mom tried to play peacemaker, pulling me aside one day while we were folding napkins. "She's happy for you, Lily," she said, her voice soft. "She's just adjusting. It's a lot to take in." But I wasn't convinced. I could feel the distance growing between us, this invisible wall I didn't know how to climb. The climax, the real gut punch moment, came the night before my wedding. It was late, maybe 11 p.m., and I was at my apartment, surrounded by crumpled paper and half-written vows I couldn't get right. Jake was at his place, respecting some half-baked superstition about not seeing me before the ceremony, and I was a nervous wreck. The doorbell rang and there was Sarah standing in the hallway in a hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Can I come in?" she asked, and I nodded, stepping aside. She sat on my couch, hands clasped in her lap, and for a long time she didn't say anything. Then she looked up, her eyes glassy, and said, "I need to tell you something." My stomach plummeted. "Mark proposed last week," she said, pulling a small ring out of her pocket. A simple gold band with a tiny diamond. I said yes. But I didn't want to tell you until after your wedding. I didn't want to steal your moment. I stared at her, my brain struggling to catch up. And then I laughed. A loud, ridiculous bark of a laugh that startled us both. "Are you kidding me?" I said, grinning despite the tears prickling my eyes. "Sarah, that's amazing." I lunged forward and hugged her. And that's when she broke. She started sobbing, big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body, and I held her tighter. "I was so mad at you," she choked out, her face buried in my shoulder. "Not because I wasn't happy for you, but because it felt like I'd failed. Like I was supposed to be first and I wasn't, and I didn't know how to deal with that." I pulled back, tears streaming down my own face, and said, "Sarah, you didn't fail. You're not supposed to do anything. We're just us." We sat there, crying and laughing, spilling all the messy, tangled feelings we'd been carrying for months. And when she left that night, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The wedding was perfect, not in a glossy magazine way, but in a messy, real way that fit us. It was a crisp October afternoon, leaves crunching underfoot, and the park smelled like earth and cider. I wore a second-hand dress I'd found at a thrift store, ivory lace, a little frayed at the hem, and Jake looked unfairly handsome in a borrowed suit. Sarah was my maid of honor, radiant in a burgundy dress she'd picked out herself, and when she handed me my bouquet she whispered, "You're a bride, Lil." I can't believe it. The ceremony was short, just us and 30 people under that oak tree, and when Jake kissed me, the cheers were loud enough to scare a flock of birds out of the branches. At the reception, Sarah gave a toast that wrecked me. "Lily's always been the wild one," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "But she's taught me something. Love doesn't follow rules or timelines. It just happens, and it's beautiful." Everyone cried, even Dad, who pretended he had something in his eye. Sarah and Mark got married 6 months later, in a big church ceremony with all the trimmings, white dress, string quartet, a cake with 4 tiers. I was her maid of honor, and standing beside her as she said her vows, I felt this quiet, full-circle peace. My whirlwind engagement didn't break us. It stretched us, challenged us, and in the end made us closer. We let go of the supposed to and leaned into the what is. And that's what matters. So that's my story, how I beat my sister to the altar and lived to laugh about it. It's a testament to how unpredictable life can be. How it throws you curveballs when you least expect it. I'd love to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and tell me if you've ever had a family twist like this turn your world upside down. And if you're up for more chaos, check out my video on sibling rivalries that'll make you glad you're not us. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy, wonderful ride.